welcome to this episode of Chain Conversations. My name is Laura McQueen and I'm the MD here at Leaders. This season is part of a programme called the Leaders Meet Diversity series, which we've been running in partnership with Facebook for a couple of years now. Chain Conversation brings together leaders from a variety of backgrounds across professional sport to share their personal stories, to reflect on their own career journeys, pinpointing some peaks and troughs, some helps and hindrances along the way to share with you. The premise is simple, really. Person A picks person B to interview, person B picks person C to interview, and so on and so on. So over the course of the coming months, you'll really get exposed to quite a lot of independent personal journeys throughout the sports industry. The aim is to inspire you, to energise you, and to showcase why diverse thinking and diverse opportunity makes for a better business across sport and beyond. I really hope you enjoy it and speak to you soon.
Hey, Jerome, welcome to Chain Conversations. I'm excited to be the interviewee today and especially to be interviewing you. So I'm going to start with putting you on the spot and asking you to maybe tell us a bit about yourself and what do you do currently at Nielsen?
Cool. Thank you. My name is Jerome Quartey. I work at Nielsen Sports, so the sports division at Nielsen. I'm the head of marketing for Europe, and essentially my role is building out our go-to-market strategy, which is very B2B focused, but then kind of driving leads for our commercial team.
Okay, well, so quite a lot going on in that role. I would love to kind of hear more a bit around how did you get to where you are? There's so much responsibility leading a team across the region. So how did you get to where you are and how did you kind of pick up the different skills that you needed in your role today?
Yeah, sure. I can start way back from the beginning.
Day one, yeah.
Yeah, so from day one. So I always wanted to be in the sports industry or work in the sports industry anyway. And I find it really challenging. So when I started university, I went to Middlesex Uni in London, and I studied marketing communications. So as soon as I came out of university, I was like pursuing any sports industry job that I could find, but I still found it like really difficult. So like my probably first 6 months after graduating, I was unemployed, right? Like a lot of students, unless they're fortunate. Yeah, and I was firing over probably like 200 CVs and cover letters at the time, just trying to get my foot in the door. And I really struggled. So I ended up getting a role in recruitment, but working in marketing. It was a really junior role. It was like an admin assistant type thing. But I took it on board anyway. And, kind of started to needed to earn some money. Jumped in there and I was working at a company called City Tech for 2 years. And it was quite interesting. I mean, I wasn't passionate about what I was doing in terms of the industry, but it was still good to kind of just exercise some of what I'd learned at university in that current role. At the same time, I was still applying and really pushing, trying to get into the sports industry. And I caught a break. So a friend of mine who at the time was working at British Athletics, he did some work with a company called Replicom, which Nielsen now acquired. And he had a direct line into the managing director of the UK team, which at the time was John Stainer. Luckily enough, John Stainer was looking for a marketing exec at the time. And they had been interviewing for quite a while and hadn't found the right person. So my friend basically just messaged John on LinkedIn, like on a whim. He was like, "Hey, I've got someone that would be interested. If you want to know more, please reach out to him." And then there's me not getting any responses, kind of firing out CVs and things like that to different places. And I get a direct IM on LinkedIn from, the MD of Replicom at the time. So I was like, wow, okay. I was like, wow, I need to get my head in gear now and start actually thinking about this properly. So it was quite a rigorous interview process actually. But I finally managed to get my foot in the door. They were pleased with my interview, I guess. They took me on board. and I never looked back. So that was my first kind of entry into the sports industry. And then fast forward 4.5, 5 years, and I've kind of worked my way up since I've been there. Survived an acquisition, a lot of business changes and whatnot. And here I am today.
There's just so much grit and passion in that story. I think like from 6 months coming out of uni, not having a job, to working with your friend and asking him to kind of message his contacts and then getting that IM on LinkedIn, I think it's super inspiring. So I would love to kind of get into your head a bit and understand, where did that drive and passion come from? Because as you know, coming out of uni, there's so many grad schemes, there's so many things that you can just join for the sake of it. Like, what kept you going, and where did that grit and passion come from to get into sports?
Yeah, so I've always been a super competitive person, like playing sport, running around. Like, it doesn't matter how trivial the sport might be or game, I always want to win. And sometimes I always play the card of like, oh, I'm not that bothered. But deep down, I'm like, I'm truly bad. Yeah, so I've always been super competitive, and I played football at a decent standard as well. And I was really interested in the commercial side of sport. So I think from university, when I started to kind of feed that interest a little bit more, I found that was the direction I wanted to head in. And I always found that even from university, I knew it was going to be hard to get into the industry. But I always used to tell myself, like, be the change that you want to see. And in the sports industry, and this is probably going to deviate a little bit from your question, I was always very much like, oh, it's not a diverse industry at all. Like, it's really hard to get in. And someone with my color skin as well was like, wow, there's like no one I can speak to about this, because there's not many people that are in the industry or anyone that I have that kind of direct connect with. So I was always very much like, if I can get in there, I can help open the door and create opportunities for others as well. And that was something that I was very passionate about. So I think that kind of kept like spurring me on. So in different days where I was like, oh, this is difficult and I'm not too interested in getting rejected every day, I'd always just remember like my ultimate goal of why I wanted to kind of do it. It wasn't necessarily just for me to climb the ladder, but also kind of help broaden the community of sport as well.
I love that. And I love how you said, be the change you want to see in the world. And that's exactly what you're doing, right? Like, working hard, not just for yourself, but for everyone that's going to come behind you and next to you, and like bringing people up along the way. That's really cool. So for you, I'm almost going to jump to like my third question, just because I'm so inspired now, but what do you see as your like legacy? Like, what is it that you want to achieve in the industry? Is it help grow diversity? Is it more focusing on growing a specific sport? Like, what is that? What is the ultimate thing that you're working towards?
Yeah, I guess for me, and this is probably how I used to play the sport as well. So my sport was football. I played a lot of it. I guess for me, my biggest goal is creating an environment where everyone can flourish. And that's essentially like any kind of ethnic background. Doesn't matter who's in your team, because everyone comes with different skill sets. And I think the position I'm in now is great, and I can do that. But there's also another layer that you can add on top, and you can always kind of implement change. And I think that's probably my biggest goal, right? Wherever I am, make sure that I can help implement change and help create a community for people to be able to flourish and feel comfortable in their workplace. And I think that's probably something that I'll continue to be passionate about. That's
awesome. And like you touched on a point earlier when you said, bringing people together from different backgrounds, different interests, and I totally agree with you. Sport isn't necessarily the most diverse industry, and there's a lot of egos, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of different people to try to manage and get them to work towards the same goal. What are some of your leadership principles, and how do you make sure you bring out the best in people when sometimes there's so much diversity going on or conflicting opinions?
Yeah, so I'm always one that would stand by, like, don't be afraid to fail. When I first started in the industry, I was incredibly scared to fail. Like, I never wanted to put a foot wrong. And John Stainer, who ended up being one of my key mentors. I still talk to him quite regularly now, but he's moved to the US to run that sports division now team. But he was very much like pivotal to kind of re-educating me and pushing me in that direction. He always used to just tell me, like, you're going to make mistakes. Like, there's no two ways about it. And I think in my first month, I made one of the biggest mistakes ever. And it was something really like silly, like a newsletter, like a client newsletter that I sent out. And I was literally like head in hands moment. Like I thought the world was going to end. I was like, I haven't even passed my probation yet. What's going on? And then, yeah. And I had this conversation with John, and he was very much like, look, you're gonna do this more than once. So I'm obviously not gonna fire you for something as trivial as this. But yeah, just take it as a learning. And I think that's something that I always challenge myself now. It's like, don't be afraid to fail. That's a principle that I always like challenge my team with now as well. It's like, there's no shortage of opportunities right in the world and ideas and things that you can come up with, but the people willing to execute them and take that risk is where you kind of start to distinguish yourself, and you can really just separate yourself from the crowd. So that's definitely one of my core principles that I try to stand by. And I touched on it earlier, just having the right community. Like, I'm a very open person. I think I'm quite personable. Like, I like to have open conversations with people. So my door's always open as well. So I'm one of those people that like to just kind of jump into any conversation and be there for my team.
That's awesome. And I think I've got time for one more question, and this might be a cheesy one, so sorry about that. But if you have advice to your younger self, what would you say to that boy who's like jobless, straight out of uni, trying to get into sports?
Yeah, this might ring true for a lot of people that went to university. Take your first year more serious. I mean, it's all well and good having fun, right? But I mean, I really pushed it with having fun in that first year, and I think there's probably more things that I could have done to help just facilitate my learning at that point. But yeah, I mean, fast forward now, I can't complain. So it all adds up and helps. So that's probably my story.
Actually, sorry, I just thought of another question.
Yeah, go for it.
It's be my last one. What would be your advice? What would be your advice to people leading the industry at the very top, like our managers, CEOs, that are looking to grow diversity and diverse teams?
Yeah, sure. So I think now more than ever, and just in the current climate of all the things that have been happening, people are being challenged to think differently. So I'm a firm believer that we always should challenge our leadership team to have diverse thinking. If they want to have, a team that's all singing and all dancing and able to really produce the best work, then you have to have a team that is diverse, right? Because people come with different skill sets and different backgrounds that can add value. And I think in this day and age, you can't neglect that. It's something that's so important in terms of just building businesses. So having that open mind would be really important from my perspective, and also just having a level of openness to allow people to come and voice their opinions, let them be themselves.
That's good. I really like that. Thank you so much, Jerome. I had so much fun talking to you and learned so much. And super inspiring. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
No worries. Thank you, Anna.